Ever wondered what happens when the tables turn and the landlord becomes the one desperate for control? Meet a woman who thought she had it all, until a charming tenant flipped the script and left her questioning everything. Dive into a story of power, temptation, and the thin line between who's really in charge. Like and subscribe to stay hooked on every twist. It's been 5 years, and sometimes I still find myself looking around, unable to believe that this is the same house. Years ago, it belonged to someone else, a place where I often felt small and unsure, buried beneath overdue rent notices and the burden of decisions I wasn't ready to make. But now, it's mine. Or technically, it's ours. My husband and I bought the building after his business finally started to thrive. He's hardly around anymore, constantly hopping between cities and handling deals I can barely keep track of. I used to care. I used to stay on top of everything. Now, I don't even ask. I run the property, screen tenants, collect the rent, and fix whatever needs fixing. In a way, it keeps me grounded. Maybe it even reminds me of a version of myself I'd rather forget. But lately, there's one tenant who's been on my mind. Devin. He's in his early 30s, tall, self-assured, with a quiet kind of attractiveness that sneaks up on you. He moved in about 6 months ago. Always polite, always charming. Perhaps a little too charming if I'm being honest. But recently, he's been slipping. He's 2 months behind on rent now, and the excuses are starting to sound familiar. Work is slow, his paycheck is late, his car broke down. I've heard it all before, and I know where this leads. The truth is, I know exactly how this goes because I've been in his position. It happened today. He came to my door, his eyes soft and his energy tense. I could already tell what he was going to say before he even opened his mouth. "I know I'm behind," he said, scratching the back of his neck like a teenager about to be scolded. "But I swear I'm good for it. I just need a little more time." I didn't respond immediately. I just let him speak, observing him the way my old landlord once observed me, measured, patient, and a little too quiet. I noticed how his eyes kept flicking around the room. He saw the hardwood floors, the art on the walls, the subtle scent of something floral and expensive in the air. This place wasn't just an apartment anymore. It was a message. Finally, I spoke, folding my arms and leaning back against the kitchen counter. "When I was in your position," I said, "someone once gave me an option." He raised an eyebrow, not quite understanding. "What kind of option?" I took a slow step toward him, letting the silence speak for itself. "An arrangement," I said quietly. He blinked. I tilted my head just slightly, letting the implication land. "I'm sure you can figure it out," I replied. "I've been where you are. I know what it feels like to be desperate, and I know what it means to take a risk when there's no other way out." The words hung between us like smoke, and for a moment, neither of us moved. Then he gave a nervous laugh, unsure whether I was joking. I didn't laugh back. "I'm not saying you have to," I said, quickly softening my tone. "But I'm not offering this to just anyone." He stared at me for a long time, mouth slightly open, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. "I'll give you until the end of the week," I added, brushing past him toward the door. "After that, I'll need a decision." I felt his gaze on me as I left, and for the first time in a long while, something stirred beneath the surface. Something dangerous, familiar, and maybe even a little thrilling. Just like that, I was back to where it all started. But this time, I wasn't the one behind on rent. For the next few days, Devin avoided me. It wasn't obvious at first. He still sent polite replies to my check-in texts and gave a casual, "Hey," when we passed in the hallway. But there was something different in his eyes, as though he'd become aware of something he wasn't meant to notice, and it made him uncomfortable. I'd sometimes catch glimpses of him through the window, sitting on the porch in his worn gray hoodie, smoking, thinking, always thinking. I should have felt guilty, maybe. I don't know. A part of me wondered if I had crossed a line, but another part, the part I hadn't let breathe in a long time, felt something else entirely: power. Because for once, I wasn't the one asking. I wasn't the one afraid, and I knew that look in his eyes, the hesitation, the struggle. That's what made it worse. Or maybe better. He was considering it. Everything came to a head on Friday night. The building was still, everyone either out or settled into their weekend routines. The air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. I was halfway through folding laundry when I heard a knock at the door. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Devin stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes downcast, jaw tense like he was holding something back. "You said I had until the end of the week," he said. I nodded. "It's the end of the week." He didn't smile, didn't flinch, just looked past me into the apartment, as if trying to figure out whether walking inside would change everything. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, letting him in. He moved cautiously, like he didn't quite trust the floor beneath him. I closed the door softly behind us, the sound of the lock clicking louder than it should have. For a moment, we just stood there, the silence stretching between us like it was daring one of us to break it. "I've been thinking," he said finally, running a hand through his buzzed hair, "about what you said." I stayed quiet, waiting for him to say it, to say the words. "I've never done anything like that," he confessed, still not looking at me. "But I'm not stupid. I know what happens when the rent keeps piling up. I already have one eviction on my record. If I get another—" His voice trailed off, and I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he shifted his weight from foot to foot. "I just don't want you to think I'm one of those guys," he faltered. "You know, someone who takes advantage." I almost laughed at the irony of it all. "Devin," I said, stepping closer, "you're not taking advantage of anything. I offered it, just like it was once offered to me." He looked up at me, processing the words. "So it really happened back then?" I nodded slowly. "Almost." He raised an eyebrow. "Almost?" "Yeah," I replied, the word feeling strange as I spoke it. "Almost." We lapsed into silence again, and in that stillness, something changed. I could feel it, thick, electric, crawling across the space between us like a live wire. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. "What if we don't do anything?" I frowned, confused. "What do you mean? What if I just stay?" he asked, his eyes locking onto mine for the first time. "What if you let me stay? No strings attached, just trust me to make it right eventually. No favors, no arrangements." I laughed softly, not mocking, just surprised. "That's not how the world works, Devin." "Doesn't mean we can't try," he said. And that's when I saw it. A flash of something more than charm or desperation. Something deeper. Something dangerous. Conviction. He wasn't just going along with things. He was challenging me. And it threw me off balance. I stepped even closer, close enough to smell the faint trace of sweat and cologne clinging to his hoodie. "Do you really think I'd put myself out there like that, just to be turned down?" He didn't respond, but I saw his throat move as he swallowed. I reached up and brushed something off his shoulder, something that wasn't there, just to feel the tension in him. "You ever wonder why I offered you that option, Devin?" I asked quietly. He held my gaze. "Yeah, I have." I waited, letting him speak. "Because you saw something in me," he said, his voice low. "Or maybe you saw something in yourself from back then." He turned and walked toward the door, but paused, his hand on the knob. "I'm not going to beg to stay," he said without turning around. "But I know what this is, what you're doing, and if you're going to play that game, just know I know how to play it too." Then he left, just like that. But he left the door cracked, and I couldn't help but stare at it, wondering if this was just the beginning or if I had started something I couldn't finish. The scariest part? I wasn't even sure which side I was on anymore. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, all I saw was Devin standing in that doorway, his back to me, his voice calm and low, like he knew exactly what he was doing. Like he walked away, not because he was done, but because he wanted me to chase. And I hated how right he was. I wasn't her anymore, the quiet, struggling woman from 5 years ago, the one who begged for mercy behind closed doors and pretended she still had some dignity left. She was gone. Now I was the one holding the keys, the one making the calls. And yet somehow he had me on my heels. By morning, I was pacing the kitchen, phone in hand, scrolling through his contact, staring at it like it held a secret I wasn't ready to hear. I didn't text, I didn't call, I just waited. Waited for him to knock again, for him to show up and say he'd changed his mind. But he didn't. 2 days went by, then 3. Still nothing, but I knew he hadn't left. I could hear him sometimes upstairs, the thump of footsteps or a door creaking open. I even heard his music once, faintly, like he wanted me to know he was still around, still breathing in the space I had given him. Then came Wednesday night. I was pulling into the driveway when I saw his bedroom window open. The curtain fluttered, like a whisper, and there he was, standing at the edge, bare-chested, catching the last bit of light. Phone pressed to his ear, laughing softly. Not at me, not with me. Just living like nothing had happened. And that got to me. I climbed the stairs to his unit faster than I had planned. I didn't even knock. I just stood outside the door, hand hovering, listening. I could hear the quiet hum of conversation inside. Maybe the TV, maybe someone on speaker. I couldn't tell, but I heard his voice, low, amused, casual. Finally, I knocked. A pause, then the sound of footsteps. The door cracked open, and there he was, shirtless, sweaty, holding a towel, clearly caught off guard. "Hey," he said, cool as ever. "Didn't expect you." "Yeah, well, guess I'm full of surprises." He opened the door wider but didn't step aside. "Everything okay? You've been avoiding me." "I've been giving you space," he said simply. "Figured that's what you wanted." "No," I replied. "You figured you wanted it, so you took it." He raised an eyebrow. "You mad about that?" I didn't answer. Instead, I pushed the door gently. He didn't resist. I stepped inside. His place was warm, lived in, slightly messy, but not dirty. The smell of his cologne mixed with sweat and something spicier from the kitchen. My eyes scanned the room without thinking, like I was trying to memorize the details. He stood behind me, watching. "You came all the way up here to fight?" he asked after a moment. "No." I turned to face him. "I came to remind you what kind of deal you're playing with." He smirked. "Funny, I thought I was the one reminding you." Something snapped then. Not anger, not lust. Something heavier. The kind of tension that doesn't explode but simmers, quiet and dangerous. "You think this is a game?" I asked, stepping closer. "No," he said. "I think it used to be, until you started wondering what would happen if I didn't play along." The air between us felt hotter than it should have. I could see it in his face. He wasn't bluffing. He knew exactly what this was, what we were, and he wasn't scared anymore. "5 years ago," I said, my voice low, "someone offered me a deal like this, and I almost took it. You know why I didn't?" "Because you still had lines back then," he said. I nodded. "And now?" He stepped in close enough that I could feel his breath. "Now you're testing mine." For a moment, we just stood there, inches apart, breathing the same air, wanting the same thing. Maybe it was just a matter of figuring out who wanted it more. And then the tension did what it always does. It found the edge and walked right up to it. He didn't touch me, not really. He just brushed past me to grab the towel from the couch, but even that simple movement, that heat, lingered. He threw the towel over his shoulder, glanced back at me, and said, "I won't beg to stay, but I won't beg for you either." I stared at him. "And what if I told you the rent's due tomorrow? Final notice?" He smiled. "Then maybe tomorrow will be interesting." I turned and walked toward the door, my heart pounding, my hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, but something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. "Sleep tight," he called as I opened the door. I didn't turn back because I knew something now. This wasn't just a game. This was a storm, and we were both standing in the middle of it, waiting to see who would get hit first. It was almost 3 a.m. when I heard the knock on my door. Not loud, not urgent, just deliberate. I had been lying there wide awake for over an hour, replaying every second of our last conversation in my mind. The words he chose, the pauses, the way he looked at me, daring me to blink first. When I opened the door, there he was. Devin, his shirt on this time, damp at the collar like he'd been pacing or wrestling with the same storm I was. His eyes met mine, calm but serious. "Didn't mean to wake you," he said. "You didn't." For a moment, neither of us moved. The silence stretched out between us like an invisible thread. One neither of us wanted to cut, but neither knew how to tie either. Then he asked, "Can I come in?" I didn't answer. I just stepped back and let him walk inside. He glanced around the place like it was familiar but foreign now, like he was trying to see if I'd changed anything, hidden something, or maybe left something out on purpose. I hadn't, but his eyes still scanned everything, including me. Can't sleep? He asked, settling on the edge of the couch. I crossed my arms. Is that why you came down here? He looked at me and gave the smallest shrug. That, and I figured you weren't sleeping either. You figured right, I replied. Another silence followed, one that felt heavier this time, more loaded. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. What are we doing? He asked. I didn't pretend not to know what he meant. We're walking a line, I said. He nodded. Yeah, but whose line is it? That question hung in the air because it was a good one. Mine, his, ours. Or was it something neither of us controlled? Just some quiet current pulling us both towards something we weren't ready to admit. I sat down across from him, watching the way he looked at the floor, his hands at me, as though he were searching for something solid to latch onto. You ever think about how this would look from the outside? I asked quietly. He met my gaze. I try not to. Why not? Because I'd rather deal with the mess I see from the inside. And somehow, that made too much sense. Too much sense. There was something disarming about Devin. His calm, his timing, the way he could stand in a moment like it didn't scare him, like even the awkward, complicated parts of life didn't make him flinch. I used to think power meant control. Me holding the keys, me setting the terms. But in that moment, I realized something else. Real power was wanting something you shouldn't and not backing down from it. I'm married, I said suddenly, like I was reminding both of us. So am I, he replied, still looking at me. Still doesn't stop this. What is this? I asked, my voice quieter now. He looked at me for a long moment. Whatever you say it is. That answer felt like both permission and a warning. I stood up and walked past him toward the kitchen, just to create some distance. I poured myself a glass of water, not because I needed it, but because I needed something to do. His presence had a way of making the air feel thick, charged. You know, I said over my shoulder, you could have just paid your rent like everyone else. He chuckled softly. Would have been boring, though. I turned to face him. So, this is fun for you? He stood up too, walked over to the counter, coming close enough that our arms almost brushed. You tell me? I could feel the pull then, like gravity had tilted just for us. Like the space between us wasn't really space anymore. If I told you to leave right now, I whispered, would you? He looked me dead in the eye. Yeah, but you won't. My heart thudded hard at that, not because he was wrong, but because he was absolutely, perfectly right. He moved a fraction closer. You want to feel in control, but what you really want is someone to take that control from you, just long enough to forget how heavy it gets. I didn't move. I couldn't, because he saw too much. He stepped behind me, just barely. His voice was low in my ear. I could take it, he murmured. Right here, right now. You wouldn't stop me, but you'd hate yourself later. And I don't want you to hate me. I closed my eyes. Damn him. Damn him for knowing exactly where the edge was and for choosing not to shove me over it. His hand barely grazed the small of my back as he stepped away. That single touch sent fire up my spine. Good night, landlady, he said softly, and just like that, he left. No kiss, no touch, just words. Heavy, perfect words. I stood there in the kitchen, glass still in hand, trembling with a craving that hadn't even been fulfilled. Yet. But the storm was circling again, and next time, I wasn't so sure I'd let it pass. A week passed. Then two. Devin paid nothing, said nothing, yet I still saw him moving around his unit, running shirtless in the mornings, washing that damn car of his like he wasn't 4 months behind on rent. I hated how aware of him I had become, how the air shifted when I knew he was outside, how my breath caught when I heard his unit door. The door was slightly ajar, and though he wasn't knocking anymore, I could still feel him like warmth from behind a closed door. My husband had returned to town briefly, just for the weekend, because of some contractor issue in Miami. He smelled like hotel soap and cheap cologne from a convenience store. We slept in the same bed, but barely touched. When he left again, I didn't cry or miss him. I was too preoccupied with something or someone else. On the third Friday of the month, Devin left a white envelope on the patio table outside my kitchen window. I noticed it while I was doing dishes, my heart stopping for a moment. I stepped outside, grabbed the envelope, and opened it. It was empty, just a blank sheet of paper inside. No money, no note, no check, nothing. I stared at it for a long time, feeling something inside me shift. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. It was a challenge. At midnight, I knocked on his door. He answered after just one knock, as if he had been waiting. "Forgot something?" he asked, leaning in the doorway, his calmness maddening. "You think this is a game?" I snapped, holding up the empty envelope. He didn't flinch. He just gave me a slow look, like he was reading beyond the words. "I think you came down here looking for more than just rent," he said. "I could evict you, Devin. Tonight." His eyes didn't move. "Then do it," he said. I didn't speak. I didn't move because he knew I wouldn't. Somewhere in the midst of this chaotic mess we were dancing around, I didn't want him gone. "I want it," I whispered before I could stop myself. "I want what I had 5 years ago. I want that power back." "You had it," he said, "and then you gave it away." I felt something inside me snap open, something dark, maybe even something real. I pushed past him, walking straight into his living room. He didn't stop me. "Tell me what you want, Mrs. Landlady," he said from behind me, his voice low. I turned slowly. "You," I said. "I want you on your knees begging to stay. I want to see you desperate, humble. I want to make you pay for every second you've made me feel like this." He walked up to me, his chest inches from mine. "Then do it," he said. "Take what you want." My hand was gripping his shirt, and my body betrayed every word I had spoken. My mouth hovered near his, and then a loud knock on the door shattered everything. We both froze. One knock, then another, more urgent and repetitive. "Expecting someone?" I asked, breathless. "No," he said, stepping back slowly. The knock came again, harder this time. He walked to the door and opened it. There stood a woman, young, fit, pretty, with tired eyes, wearing leggings and a sweatshirt. She looked from Devin to me, and without needing any time to process, her eyes guessed exactly what was happening. "I'm his wife," she said, quietly controlled, but to me. Not to Devin, but to me. My stomach dropped. I looked at Devin, but his eyes were closed, his jaw tight, like he knew this moment was coming. Like he had been dreading it, but hadn't stopped it. "I told you I felt something was off," she continued. "You said I was paranoid." Devin rubbed the back of his neck but didn't speak. "I followed you today," she went on. "Saw you come back here, waited to see if you'd go out again. You didn't?" She turned back to me. "I thought maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just being insecure." I swallowed hard, my pulse racing. She stepped inside slowly, walking past Devin and standing just a foot away from me. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "Hope you don't mind," she said, her voice eerily calm. "But I recorded part of your little conversation, not enough to get you arrested or anything." She glanced at Devin, then back to me. "But definitely enough to send to your husband." Silence filled the room. I tried to breathe, but I couldn't. The air around me felt thick, closing in. She held the phone up, her thumb hovering over the screen. Then, smiling softly, she asked, "So, what are you willing to do to keep me from sending it?" And right there, in that moment, I realized something horrifying. I wasn't the only one who remembered the game from 5 years ago. I wasn't the only one willing to twist the rules. Only this time, I wasn't the one holding the power anymore.